we all know the SEC is the best division in all of sports, college sports. We know it in basketball, even though a lot of people say, wait, hold on one second. The ACC in college basketball can argue that. Now, we know Duke is there and all these teams, North Carolina. But the SEC, to me, is the top of the top, the best of the best, especially college football. Now, Alabama did have the harder schedule. There's no question. And Nick Saban, he's going to stick up for his former team. Does anybody believe that Nick Saban and Alabama, the Alabama Crimson Tide, should have made the playoffs last year? The answer would be no. They should have never made it over Florida State. I've argued it, and I'll go back and I'll argue it again. But they made it because this was Nick Saban's last year. I know the committee knew that, and Alabama has the committee has a love fest for the Alabama Crimson Tide. But it's no longer Nick Saban anymore. So this is a completely different Alabama team. Now, Alabama has a strong recruiting class. There's no question that they do. And going into the season, I think they were a top 3 recruiting class, as they always are. But again, SMU had a great season. Now, as far as what their strength of schedule was, it's definitely not as good or even anywhere close to what Alabama had. But Alabama had 2 bad losses. And those 2 losses, I believe, cost them making the playoffs. Now, if they lost against top 25 teams out of those 2 losses, they're in. There's no doubt they're in the college playoff. But they lost against 2 teams that were 6-6. So for people to sit here, including Nick Saban and everybody, today, I was actually on social media, Jabba. Yes, yours truly was actually on social media, and everybody is attacking the committee on not putting Alabama in there. And you know what's crazy? I did it last year with Florida State. They were undefeated. And their last game against, I forget who, Louisville. Louisville had a really good second half of the season. They played very well in the second half. They were not an easy team to beat. And Florida State lost their star quarterback in Jordan Travis, 5-6 games into the season, and still were undefeated. Still had the best defense in the nation. And everybody says, why did they lose against Georgia in the ball game? Maybe because 6 of their top defensive players decided not to play in the ball game because they were going to be NFL players and top draft picks. So I think people forget that. Now, going back to Alabama, I know a lot of people are upset about this. But guess what? Alabama's been there so many years. They're always there. It's time to see what SMU can do. It's time to see one of these surprise teams, these Cinderella teams. They get into this 12-team playoff, and maybe SMU goes all the way to the finals. Who the hell knows? We don't know. It's anybody's ball game. The way these brackets fall, it could happen. Nobody's going to sit here and say, well, if Alabama was the final team, they're definitely going to go to the finals, or they're definitely going to get out of that first game. They're not. And then there's no question that these teams are evenly matched in many different ways. It's very, very close. It's a very short, thin lining. And I do believe that SMU, I wouldn't be surprised if SMU comes out victorious in their first game and knock off the number 1. What is it? They're
playing Penn State, number 6.
Number 6 seed. They could beat Penn State. SMU has beaten good teams this year. It's not like they haven't beaten top 25 teams. So I know you're sitting here today and say, well, Alabama would have had a better chance against Penn State. Really? Really? All it takes is one play. This game could come down to a field goal kick. A field goal kick. It could be cold. It could be rainy. It could be windy. Anything could happen, and SMU could shock and surprise the world.
Yeah, and again, it's the same discussion as last year too. Like, you can't judge the game based on who would match up better against the higher seed. No, you have to judge it on one process. Pick a process to make that kind of thing work. And in other years, if maybe Alabama had one loss differently than the 6-6 teams, maybe they lost to Ole Miss or somebody else that was good in the SEC like that. If they play Texas again this year and they lost, okay, fine. Maybe you have an argument. You lost to 2 unranked teams. Vanderbilt is a baseball school that just happened to get good at football this year. They beat some good teams. Finally, they're rising program, but they've never been good. And Oklahoma had their worst season in a long time since I've started watching college football. That is like things you can't excuse. Okay, you want to blame the non-conference schedule? You lost in conference. You beat Wisconsin out of conference, fine. You have these games scheduled down the road. those games matter too, Nick. You're right about that, but you lost in conference. It has nothing to do with anything like that. And again, the process of it should not be based on who we think should beat the lower seeds more. There's a reason that the buys are different now too. Boise and Arizona State have the buys. I don't know if anyone thinks Boise and Arizona State are the 3 and 4 seeds, like the third and fourth best team. But the process is designed to create parity too. And that's why I think the committee is right in still picking SMU, who had a quality schedule, even though it was 60th compared to 16th. A quality schedule, 2 tough losses, BYU and Clemson, that are good teams, and a really good track record all around. It's not like they played a cakewalk schedule the entire season.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you look at it and it's like, I mean, literally, Bama only scored 3 points against a 6-6 Oklahoma team. By the way, did it bug anybody else watching Nick Saban sit in his house with a suit on? Like, dude, you're not in, like, relax a little bit. Like,
he's trying to join the committee.
Yeah, I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, it was pissing me off. I'm like, dude, he can say whatever he wants, but I think at the end of the day, it comes down to W's and L's and who you lost to. And then he's like, strength of schedule, and he's pointing out all these things. But yeah, at the same time, it's like, yeah, Notre Dame, they haven't joined a conference either, and you don't complain about that. And they just sit there. Everybody has to play in a conference championship. They're just sitting twiddling their thumbs. So I think they got it right, and Alabama can stop bitching and move on and be better next year.
The crazy part about the whole thing is the seeding, right? Like, if you're Penn State, you're kind of licking your chops. You get SMU at home, probably going to be a whiteout at Happy Valley. Then you go to Boise, who's, known for running the ball. Penn State's defense before playing Oregon was a pretty decent defense.
Very good.
And then they're in the Final Four, where Oregon gets Tennessee or Ohio State as their second game. I feel like they have to go back, and it's just rank them 1 through 12. Doesn't matter about conference championships or any of that, because I think Oregon got kind of the short end of the stick on this whole thing with their draw. Anything else? I mean, I think SMU deserved to be over it in Alabama. I think Alabama had 3 losses. SMU had 2, and they played in a conference championship while Alabama was sitting at home. So, and they lost on a 56-yard field goal. Came all the way back to make that a game. So I just really think the seeding of the whole thing is kind of wacky, but I think they got the teams right.
Do you think obviously it's a trial and error maybe. Do you think they would look at like changing anything as far as they do the seeding?
I think they just got to go 1 through 12. However they rank them 1 through 12 and put them that way. There's no way that Oregon, being the number 1 seed, has to play probably the second or third best team in the tournament, their second game, where Boise or Penn State gets SMU and Boise State, who aren't known as a powerhouse or not playing in a powerhouse conference. They haven't played really anybody, and they're going to go, play Penn State, and Penn State's going to walk to the Final Four, where Oregon can probably or might not make the Final Four because of their seeding draw, being the number 1 seed. That's just wild to me.
And Jabba, to answer your question too, trial and error with the conference discrepancy will be very interesting too, because I don't think anyone coming into this year expected the 2 buys to be one of them having to be a Mountain West team either. You were thinking, okay, it'll be the ACC champion, it'll be the Big 12 champion, will probably get that. And we knew obviously the top 2 conferences are going to get the 1 and 2. But now Boise being in that mix kind of makes the conference parity very interesting, where that kind of split, maybe to Owen's point, could change the way they do the bracket in a sense. Maybe they do it more in clusters of 4 or something like that, or they change the rankings with the middle seeds, the at-large bids more. But I think that'll be the big key in the trial and error, where these conferences go these next 3.
Isn't this awesome? We're arguing how they should seed these teams. This is what we want to see. It's horrible when you have to guess. Well, these 4 teams are supposed to go there. We don't know. Now you have 12 teams. You got it right. Now it's all about figuring out how you're seeding these teams. I agree with you, Owen. Why does Oregon, if they get out of this and they get out of this round, they got to play Texas? I mean, seriously, because we expect that's a tough game. They're going to be at Arizona State. We all know that. So they're matched up against one of the best teams in the country with 2 great quarterbacks. One goes down, the other one's there. If one doesn't play well in the first half, you're bringing the other one. I mean, there's no guarantees. That sucks. If I was Oregon, I agree with you, Owen. I wouldn't like this. I don't like how it all falls for them. This is not, you work so hard to get into this tournament to be the number 1 seed. And now all of a sudden you're matched up in the second round against the Texas Longhorns. I mean, that's not fair. That really isn't. That's not fair. Screw you, the committee.
I think Texas, in addition to their offensive firepower, is the only team in the playoff that has a top 5 yardage and turnover defense too.
But my point about Texas is they should have been rated way lower. The fact is, if they're putting the best teams in, they lost to Georgia twice. Like, they can't beat one of the teams in the top 4, and they're going to be seeded number 5. No, they should have been like 10 in the seeding because they lost to the same team twice. Like, obviously they can't beat those guys. And now they're going to get, they're going to probably cakewalk to the Final Four against Oregon. And then Oregon's going to be like, well, I worked all year in the Big Ten to win it and get host. Thanks, committee. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Did you see how boring the committee, like their room was? They were all just sitting there like this. And I was like,
a bunch of old guys jerking each other off.
They knew there's going to be, they did it smart because they knew there was going to be uproar about Alabama in the seeding. So they're like, let's do this 30 minutes before the NFL starts. So everybody kind of washes over it and we get to watch NFL games. And that's what happened.
Well,
like, you didn't really hear a whole lot of complaining or anything like that.
If it was the 90s, wouldn't it be like Oregon would still be in the pack, and it would be like Oregon, Wisconsin, and Wisconsin was like ranked 8th, but that would be for the national championship. That's what we used to have. You realize that before BCS. Then BCS was kind of an improvement. We all learned like percentages and like decimal places way better because of the BCS formula. I don't know if we ever figured out how it worked, but I know that it left us with it. Yeah, since 97. And then now we actually have something that's familiar to us, that's like what they do in basketball in a way. And it's a lot more fun. The bowl games, the whole system of bowl games just hasn't been working. Except for Nebraska, of course. Nobody wants to see a 500 team face another 500 team in January.
We're just happy we got in, Fish. We're just happy we got in.
Yeah, like a great, piece of corn participation trophy or something, and but
it's the bad boy mowers.
You said it earlier. Like Florida State didn't play any of their guys last year when they weren't put in, and their game was a mockery, and that sucks. And it would have been a lot cooler if they had a chance to just be in and probably get smoked in the first round of the playoffs, but at least it would have been fair. And they wouldn't have played, and we would have seen Jared Verse and Braden Fiske, who, by the way, are 2 of the best rookies in the NFL on the same team, on that Florida State defense play. And I think we're getting some competitive football where we didn't get competitive football the last bunch of years. So I'm for this, guys. I don't care if it still's kind of got some kinks.
How could you not?
It's not fair to Oregon.
This is perfect. I mean, this
That's
is
what
what
get more college football.
Yeah, it's more competition. You see that they're competing for something at the end of the year, not watching 4 teams because, they're in the SEC, they're Alabama, Georgia, or some, bullcrap team. And then we see teams like Florida State get hosed last year because their starting quarterback, Jordan Travis, goes down, and the committee thinks, hey, there's no chance in hell they're going to beat anybody in the Final Four, so we're not even going to put them in. How could you do that to a team that's undefeated and that earned their right to go and play in that Final Four game? So that is, I know everybody's going to say you're a Seminole fan. I am a Seminole fan, but I'm not a Seminole fan. They have the best defense in the country. And you're going to tell me there's 2 guys right now dominating right now in the NFL for the LA Rams. You're going to tell me if they made it to the Final Four, they were going to play? That's ridiculous.